Jack had never imagined that one day he'd be standing in front of an alien woman, not just as a curious observer, but as someone who could strike up a conversation. The Earth had only recently signed a peace treaty with several alien species, and Jack had been lucky enough to be chosen to represent humanity at a peace event. It was a grand affair. People from different worlds had gathered, their colorful clothes and strange customs filling the hall with a sense of wonder. But the one being who stood out among the crowd was Lyra. She was different, tall and graceful, with skin that shimmered like the sky during twilight. Her features were like nothing Jack had ever seen before, angular but elegant. Her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to peer straight into his soul. But it was her hair that caught his attention most of all. It was long, falling in waves down her back, but unlike anything Jack had ever seen. It changed color depending on the light, shifting from deep blue to a soft lavender. And sometimes, it even sparkled as if it had stars trapped inside. Jack stood frozen for a moment, mesmerized by her beauty. He wasn't used to meeting people, beings, like her. His thoughts raced, but one simple thing came to mind. I have to say something. The human side of him felt nervous, but the other side, the side that had always embraced new experiences, pushed him forward. He cleared his throat, trying to appear calm. "You have great hair," he said, his voice awkward but sincere. The words seemed to hang in the air for a moment, and Jack instantly regretted them. He'd meant it as a compliment, of course. It was the only thing he could think to say. But as soon as the words left his mouth, something in Lyra's expression shifted. Her eyes widened slightly, and for a brief second, her whole body tensed. It was as if she had heard something that shocked her, something she didn't expect. Jack could feel the air between them grow thick with tension, and his heart began to race. Had he offended her? He hadn't meant to, but her reaction left him uncertain. His face flushed, and he quickly stammered, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I just thought, your hair is, different. Beautiful, actually." Lyra didn't respond immediately. She stood still, her violet eyes studying him. Jack shifted uncomfortably, wondering if he had crossed some unspoken line. He had heard that alien cultures were very different from human customs, but he hadn't expected this kind of reaction. After what felt like an eternity, Lyra took a small step forward, her hair shifting with her movement, the colors changing like a reflection of her inner thoughts. Then, with a calm, almost serene voice, she spoke. "Your words," she began carefully, "are not something we hear often." Jack blinked, trying to make sense of her words. "What do you mean?" he asked, his confusion growing. Lyra's gaze softened slightly. "In my culture, a comment on one's hair is more than a compliment. It carries deeper meanings. It can be a sign of respect, or even a challenge. You have just unknowingly made a very bold statement." Jack stood there, feeling more awkward than ever. He hadn't realized his simple compliment could be so significant. But before he could apologize, Lyra raised a hand, signaling that there was no need for him to explain further. "Let's walk," she suggested, her voice gentle. "I will tell you more about it." As they began to walk side by side, Jack couldn't help but feel intrigued. He had just complimented an alien woman, and somehow, that moment had led to something far deeper than he could have ever imagined. As Jack and Lyra walked through the peaceful garden of the event venue, the tension between them lingered. Jack had never been good at reading people, especially not an alien woman whose culture was so far removed from his own. The garden was quiet, with lush, otherworldly plants stretching toward the sky, their colors shifting with the sunlight. The air smelled fresh, clean, like something Jack had never experienced before. But it wasn't the beauty of the surroundings that occupied his mind. It was the awkward silence that hung between him and Lyra. Lyra's hair, which had once shimmered with life, was now still, as if it too were waiting for an explanation. Jack stole a quick glance at her. She was tall, her movements fluid, as if every step was deliberate. Her eyes, still a deep violet, seemed to be lost in thought, and Jack wasn't sure if she was still upset or just processing his words. Finally, after what felt like a long pause, Lyra spoke. "Your words," she began slowly, her voice calm but tinged with something Jack couldn't quite place. "They are not something we hear often, especially not from a human." She glanced at him, her eyes searching his face for something. "Compliments are rare among my people. We rarely speak of appearances, especially hair." Jack, unsure of what to say, nodded awkwardly. "I'm sorry if I said something wrong. I didn't mean to offend you." Lyra paused, then shook her head gently. "You didn't offend me. I wasn't expecting it. For my people, hair represents much more than just a part of our bodies. It carries the stories of our ancestors. Every strand of it connects us to our history. To speak about it, especially in such a personal way, is not common." Jack blinked, trying to absorb what she was saying. "I didn't know. I thought it was just a compliment. But now, I understand." Lyra looked at him with a softness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "You see, for us, hair is a reflection of our strength, our identity, and our connection to the people we care for. When someone comments on it, it can mean a great deal. It's as if they are acknowledging your soul." Jack didn't know how to respond to that. He had never thought of something as simple as a compliment having so much weight behind it. He had only meant to break the ice, but now it seemed he had stepped into something much deeper than he ever could have imagined. "I didn't mean to make it so heavy," Jack muttered, feeling more embarrassed by the second. Lyra gave him a small smile, her hair shifting slightly, almost as if it too were responding to her changing mood. "It's not heavy. It's just different." She paused for a moment, then added, "In my culture, only those who are close to us can speak of such things. You, a human, are the first to ever do so." Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. He wasn't sure if she was saying that he had earned some kind of special place with her, or if he had crossed a line he couldn't return from. But her smile seemed to ease his worries just a little. Do you think this is a bad thing?" Jack asked quietly, his voice unsure. Lyra turned her head slightly, her eyes meeting his. "No, Jack. It's just a surprise. A pleasant one. Actually. You see, your honesty. It's different from what we're used to." Jack's heart skipped a beat. A pleasant surprise. He wasn't sure if that was a good sign, but he was willing to take it as one. He had made an unexpected connection, and despite his clumsy start, it seemed like Lyra was open to it. "Would you like to learn more?" Lyra asked softly. Jack smiled, feeling a new sense of warmth spread through him. "I'd like that very much." And so, as they continued walking through the quiet garden, Jack felt a sense of anticipation for what was to come. What had started as a simple compliment had somehow turned into an opportunity for deeper understanding, and for the first time, Jack felt like he was truly connecting with someone, an alien woman, on a level he had never expected. The days following Jack's awkward compliment passed in a blur. What began as a simple interaction had grown into something more, something Jack hadn't anticipated. Lyra had agreed to show him more of her culture, to help him understand the deeper meanings behind her customs. He was eager to learn, but still unsure of how to navigate this strange new world. Every interaction with her felt like stepping into uncharted territory. Lyra had invited him to her quarters, a room filled with ancient artifacts and books from her people's history. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting scenes of their ancestors, and the room hummed with a quiet energy that made Jack feel small and insignificant in comparison. Lyra, however, seemed completely at home in this space. Her presence was calming, as if the room itself welcomed her. As Jack sat across from her, his curiosity piqued. "So, you said your hair has a deeper meaning. What does it really symbolize?" Lyra smiled, her hair shifting ever so slightly as she spoke. "It's not just about beauty, Jack. Our hair tells the story of our lives, our families, our struggles. Each strand represents a piece of our past, our victories, our losses, and the people who shaped us. The color changes as we experience new things, as we grow stronger or weaker. It's a living history. Jack listened intently, his mind racing with questions. He had never thought about hair in such a way. To him, it had always been something trivial, something people changed every few months for fun. But to Lyra, it was sacred. "So, your hair, it's not just yours, then?" Jack asked, trying to understand. Lyra nodded slowly. "No, it's not just mine. It's a part of my family, my people. When you compliment my hair, you're not just complimenting me. You're acknowledging the entire lineage of my ancestors, the generations that came before me." Jack felt a wave of understanding wash over him. He had unintentionally crossed a boundary, yes, but now he understood why it had been so significant. Lyra's hair was a symbol of her history, a bridge connecting her to a past he could never truly comprehend. It wasn't just about her beauty. It was about her heritage, her identity. "I didn't realize how much meaning it held," Jack said, feeling a bit guilty. "I just thought, well, I thought it looked nice." Lyra's expression softened, and her eyes, those deep violet eyes, gazed at him with something close to affection. "You didn't know, Jack. That's all. And now you do." Jack felt relieved. He hadn't offended her after all. But he still felt like there was so much more to learn, so many more layers to uncover about her and her culture. "You're very different from what I expected," Jack said, almost as an afterthought. "I didn't think anyone would take something like hair so seriously." Lyra chuckled softly. "It's not about seriousness, Jack. It's about connection. It's about understanding that every person, every being, carries with them the weight of their history. We are all shaped by what came before us." Jack nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had always thought of himself as someone who valued history, his people's past, the struggles they faced. But Lyra's perspective opened his eyes to something deeper. Her history was in her hair, in every strand that grew from her scalp. And now it felt like she was sharing a piece of her soul with him. "I think I'm starting to understand," Jack said, his voice softer now. "And I'd like to learn more. About you. About your people." Lyra's smile was warm, and for the first time, Jack felt that strange tension between them begin to fade. It was replaced with something else, something he couldn't quite define but knew was important. "I'd like that too, Jack," Lyra replied. As they continued to talk, the room seemed to grow warmer, the connection between them deepening. Jack knew that he had only scratched the surface of Lyra's world, but in that moment, he felt a spark of something real, something worth exploring. The days turned into weeks, and Jack found himself spending more and more time with Lyra. What had started as a simple encounter at the peace event had grown into a deeper connection between them. Each conversation seemed to bring them closer, as Lyra shared more about her people's customs, their rituals, and the ways they viewed the universe. Jack, in turn, opened up about his own life, his world, and the things that had shaped him. Slowly but surely, they were beginning to understand each other in a way that Jack had never expected. One afternoon, Lyra invited Jack to her private quarters again. This time, however, it was different. There was a sense of familiarity in the air, an unspoken comfort between them. Jack had grown accustomed to the warmth of her presence, the way she seemed to always speak with such calm wisdom. He couldn't help but admire her, not just for her beauty, but for the strength and grace she carried in every word, every gesture. As they sat down, Lyra handed Jack a small object wrapped in a soft cloth. "This," she said softly, "is a symbol of my people's history. It's called a Vranth, a family artifact passed down through generations. It represents the bond we share with our ancestors." Jack took the object carefully, unwrapping it to reveal a small, intricately carved stone. The stone was smooth to the touch, its surface etched with patterns that seemed to move as the light hit them. Jack couldn't help but be in awe. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "I've never seen anything like it." Lyra nodded. "It's a part of me, just as my hair is. Every piece of my history is embedded in this stone. It's a reminder of where I come from and who I am." Jack held the stone in his hands, feeling the weight of it, both physically and emotionally. He had never thought of his own family or heritage in the way Lyra did. To him, history was something to study, something to learn about in books. But to Lyra, it was something she carried with her every day. "This is incredible," Jack murmured, gazing at the stone. "You've shared so much with me already, Lyra. I didn't expect any of this." Lyra smiled softly, her violet eyes warm. "You've earned it, Jack. Not many humans are open to learning about our ways. But you've shown a genuine interest. You've earned my trust." Jack felt a deep sense of pride at her words, even though he hadn't realized he was doing anything extraordinary. He had just wanted to understand her better, to learn about a world so different from his own. But now it felt like he was being allowed into something sacred, something personal. "I want to know more," Jack said, his voice steady. "About your people, about your world, and about you, Lyra." Lyra's eyes met his, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was filled with an understanding that neither had experienced before. Jack realized, in that moment, that he wasn't just learning about Lyra's world. He was learning about her, and in turn, about himself. "All right," Lyra said, breaking the silence with a soft smile. "But only if you're ready for the next step." Jack raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's the next step?" Lyra leaned forward, her hair shifting with the movement. "You'll see. But first, let's begin with something more personal." Jack's heart raced, but it wasn't from fear. It was excitement. He had crossed into a territory he never thought he would, a place where two worlds could merge, where two beings could learn from each other. And with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. The next few days were filled with tension, but not the kind that Jack had expected. It wasn't the kind of tension that came from awkwardness or misunderstanding. It was the kind that comes when something important is on the verge of happening. Jack could sense that Lyra had something important to show him, something that would take their relationship to the next level. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he trusted her. One morning, Lyra invited Jack to accompany her to a ceremonial site outside the city. The journey took them to a vast, open area, where the land seemed to stretch on forever. It was quiet, with only the sound of a gentle breeze moving through the trees. In the center of the area stood a large stone structure, covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell the story of her people's history. "This is the place where important ceremonies are held," Lyra explained as they approached the structure. "It is a place of reflection and tradition." Jack looked around, amazed by the beauty of the site. The carvings on the stone walls depicted scenes of triumph and struggle, battles fought, and peace made. The stories of Lyra's people were written in these carvings, each one representing a chapter of their history. Lyra led him to the center of the structure, where a raised platform stood. The platform was surrounded by a circle of stones, each one representing a different family within her people. Lyra stepped onto the platform and turned to face Jack. "This is where we honor our ancestors," she said. "It is where we speak our truth and offer our respect. Today, you will join me in this ritual." Jack felt a knot form in his stomach. He hadn't expected to be part of something so personal, so significant. But as he looked into Lyra's eyes, he saw only trust, not pressure. "What do I need to do?" Jack asked, trying to steady his nerves. Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing softly. "You only need to speak honestly. This ceremony is about sharing what is deep inside, what we carry with us. For me, it's my ancestors. For you, it may be your past, your family, or even your feelings for me." Jack's heart raced. The thought of sharing something so personal made him nervous, but he realized that this was a moment of connection. Lyra was giving him a chance to open up, to speak freely and honestly, something that was rare for her people. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," Jack admitted. "I'm not sure I can share something so important." Lyra stepped closer, her presence calming. You don't have to share everything, Jack. Just speak from your heart. This isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. Jack took a deep breath and looked out at the carvings surrounding them. He thought about his own life, his family, the things he had struggled with, and the things he had lost. For a moment, it felt like everything in his life had led him to this moment, to this ceremony with Lyra. I'm not sure what to say, Jack began, his voice quieter than usual. But I'll try. I've never been good at sharing my emotions, but being here with you, learning about your world, about you, it's made me realize how much I've been holding back. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess I've been afraid to connect with people, with you. But now, I'm not afraid anymore. Lyra listened quietly, her hair shifting with the gentle breeze. When Jack finished speaking, she nodded slowly, her eyes filled with understanding. You've made a great step, Jack, she said softly. Opening up like that, it's not easy. But it's what brings us closer. It's what makes us stronger. Jack felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had shared something he hadn't expected to. Something vulnerable, something that made him feel exposed. But in that moment, he realized that vulnerability wasn't a weakness. It was a bridge to something deeper. As Lyra reached out and placed her hand on his, Jack felt an unspoken bond forming between them, something that went beyond words. It wasn't just about the ceremony. It was about them, their connection, and the trust that had begun to grow between them. This is just the beginning, Lyra said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. But together, we'll face whatever comes next. Jack nodded, a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He wasn't sure what the future held, but with Lyra by his side, he felt ready for anything. The days after the ceremony felt different for Jack. There was a shift between him and Lyra, something that couldn't be put into words. It wasn't just the words they had shared, or the ceremony they had experienced together. It was the feeling of trust, a bond that was starting to form in ways Jack hadn't anticipated. They had crossed a threshold, and now both of them were on a path that was impossible to turn back from. One evening, after a long day of learning about the alien cultures, Lyra invited Jack to a quiet spot outside the city, near the cliffs that overlooked a glowing, tranquil lake. The air was cool, the stars twinkling above them like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky. The calmness of the scene made Jack feel at ease, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something important was about to happen. Lyra motioned for him to sit next to her by the edge of the lake. She looked up at the stars for a long moment before speaking. There's something I need to tell you, Jack, she began softly, her voice carrying the weight of something unsaid, something I've never shared with anyone. Jack turned his head toward her, his curiosity piqued. He could see the seriousness in her eyes. It was a look he hadn't seen before, and it made him feel a bit uneasy. What is it? Jack asked, his voice gentle. He didn't want to push her, but the way she was acting made him realize that whatever she was about to say was important. Lyra took a deep breath, her hair shifting slightly in the breeze. You asked me once why my people's hair is so important, and I told you it was a symbol of our history, our identity. But I didn't tell you the whole truth. Jack nodded, waiting patiently for her to continue. He had never pushed her for more, respecting the boundaries she had set. But now he could feel that there was more to her story, something deeper than what he had been told. My hair, Lyra continued, is more than just a symbol of my people's past. It's also a sign of my future, a future I have yet to decide. She paused, her gaze distant. There are expectations placed on me. As a member of my people's royal family, my hair is connected to my power, my ability to lead. And because of that, I am expected to follow a specific path, a path that I didn't choose. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't realized how much pressure Lyra must have been under. He had seen her as strong, composed, and graceful, but now he saw the weight of her responsibility. Is that why you're here? Jack asked, his voice full of concern. To fulfill some kind of duty. Lyra turned to face him, her violet eyes intense. Yes and no. I came here as part of a treaty, yes. But I also came to find something. To find a way to live my life on my own terms. I don't want to be a pawn in a game I didn't choose to play. And Jack, I think I've found something in you. Jack felt a sudden rush of emotion. Emotions he hadn't fully understood until that moment. He had never seen Lyra so vulnerable, so open. For the first time, she wasn't just the strong, distant figure he had come to admire. She was someone struggling with her own desires, her own choices. You don't have to follow those expectations, Lyra, Jack said softly. You don't have to do anything you don't want to. If you want to live a different life, you have that choice. Lyra looked at him, her expression softening. That's what I'm afraid of, Jack. I've been taught to be strong, to be a leader. But I've also been taught to follow orders, to do what's expected. What if I choose the wrong path? What if my people, my family, rejects me for what I decide? Jack reached out and gently placed a hand on hers. You won't know unless you try. But you have the right to choose your future. And whatever path you take, I'll be here for you. Lyra's hair shifted, glowing faintly as if reacting to the warmth in her heart. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, filled with a shared understanding that went beyond words. Finally, Lyra spoke again, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you, Jack, for showing me that I have a choice, that I'm not alone. Jack smiled softly. You never were. As they sat together, the stars above them seemed to shine brighter, as if the universe itself was offering its support. Lyra's secret was no longer just hers to carry. It was a burden shared between them. And Jack knew that whatever happened next, they would face it together. The days that followed Lyra's confession were filled with uncertainty. There was something different between them now, an unspoken connection that neither of them could ignore. Jack couldn't help but think about what Lyra had said. She had always been a leader, but now she was questioning everything about her future. She had opened up to him in a way that was rare for someone like her. And though Jack didn't fully understand the weight of her responsibilities, he knew one thing for certain. He wanted to be there for her, no matter what. The peace talks between Earth and Lyra's people were nearing a critical point. The alliance was fragile, and tensions were rising. Lyra had shared with Jack that many of her people had doubts about the treaty, some even questioning whether humans were trustworthy. But the deeper concern for Lyra was her own people's expectations of her. They wanted her to become a ruler, to lead them in a way that was expected of someone of her bloodline. Jack and Lyra were alone in her quarters one evening when the weight of the situation seemed to press in on them both. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air circulating through the building. Lyra stood by the window, looking out at the darkening skyline, her thoughts distant. What if they're right? Lyra's voice broke the silence. What if my people need me to be a leader, to take my place, and I just can't do it? Jack turned toward her, his heart aching for her. He had never seen her this vulnerable before. The strong, confident woman who had once commanded his attention seemed so uncertain now, so unsure of her path. You're not weak for questioning what's expected of you, Lyra, Jack said, his voice steady. You're human too. You have the right to decide what you want. And if you don't want to follow the path they've set out for you, that's okay. You get to choose. Lyra slowly turned to face him, her violet eyes searching his face for some kind of reassurance. She had trusted him with her secrets, and now she was trusting him to help her navigate the most difficult decision of her life. But what if I fail? She whispered. What if my people see me as weak, as someone who couldn't live up to what they expected? Jack took a few steps toward her, closing the distance between them. He reached out and gently cupped her face, his thumb brushing lightly over her cheek. What if you don't fail? What if you surprise everyone, including yourself? You've already shown courage, Lyra. You've shown me that you can lead in a way that others might not even understand. You don't need to fit into a mold that someone else created for you. You can create your own path. For a moment, Lyra didn't speak. She simply stood there, her eyes locked on Jack's, as if she were weighing his words against everything she had known. Slowly, a small smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "You really believe that?" she asked softly. "I do," Jack said without hesitation. "I believe in you. More than you know." Lyra's eyes filled with emotion, and for the first time, Jack saw a hint of hope there, a hope that had been buried deep inside her. The weight of her responsibilities seemed to lift, if only for a moment. She had always thought of herself as a servant to her people's needs, their expectations, but now she was beginning to realize that she had the power to define her own future. "You're right," Lyra said, her voice gaining strength. "I've spent my life trying to live up to others' expectations, but maybe it's time I start living for myself. For us." Jack smiled, feeling a wave of relief wash over him. He had seen the strength in her, even when she couldn't see it in herself. Now he could see the spark of determination returning to her eyes. She wasn't giving up on herself. She was taking control of her destiny. "We'll face this together," Jack said, his hand still gently holding hers. "Whatever happens, we're in this together." Lyra squeezed his hand, and for the first time, she looked at him not just as a human who had stumbled into her life, but as a partner, someone who had stood by her side when the world seemed uncertain. She wasn't alone anymore. She had someone who believed in her, who saw her for who she truly was. "I'm ready," Lyra said, her voice steady and strong. "I'm ready to create my own path. And it starts now." As they stood together, looking out at the stars, Jack knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team. The future was uncertain, but together, they would make their own way. And that was all they needed. The peace talks had reached their climax. Earth's representatives, along with Lyra and her people, were gathered in the Grand Hall, surrounded by diplomats, leaders, and military officials. The stakes were high. The future of the alliance between Earth and Lyra's people rested on the next few hours. It was a defining moment, one that could change the course of history for both civilizations. Jack could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. Lyra stood beside him, her usual calm demeanor now tinged with uncertainty. She had made her decision. She was going to speak for herself, not just for her people, and she was going to do it her way. But Jack could see the weight of her decision pressing on her shoulders. The treaty's final draft lay in front of the council, the agreement that would define their cooperation for years to come. The human and alien leaders were divided. Some were in favor of the treaty, believing it to be a step forward for peace. Others, particularly those from Lyra's faction, were still skeptical. They saw humans as unpredictable, not to be trusted fully, while some of Earth's leaders feared Lyra's people were too powerful to allow such an alliance to succeed. Lyra was quiet, but Jack could see the storm brewing inside her. This was her moment, the moment when she would prove to herself and to her people that she was more than just a royal figure. She was a leader in her own right. "Lyra, you don't have to do this alone," Jack said softly, leaning in as they prepared to enter the council room. Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. There was a small smile on her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm not alone. I have you, Jack." He smiled back, though he knew she wasn't just talking about him. She had made up her mind. This was her fight, her decision to make. The doors to the council chamber opened, and the gathered representatives filed into the room. The council members sat in their seats, their eyes fixed on the center where Lyra and Jack stood. All eyes were on her now. Lyra stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. It was now or never. This was the moment where her people would either accept her as a leader or reject her for her defiance. She looked around at the faces in the room, some hopeful, others filled with doubt. "We stand at a crossroads," Lyra began, her voice clear and strong. "The future of both our peoples rests on this moment. We can choose to live in fear of one another, to keep our distance, to mistrust. Or we can choose to walk together into a new era, one where understanding and cooperation are at the forefront. Her eyes scanned the room, making contact with the eyes of both humans and aliens. I know there are doubts. I know some of you fear what this alliance might mean. But I ask you, no, I challenge you, to consider this. If we don't trust one another, if we don't take that first step toward peace, we will lose something more important than a treaty. We will lose the chance for our peoples to grow, to learn from each other. The room was silent as Lyra paused, her words hanging in the air. Jack watched her, amazed by her confidence. This wasn't the same woman he had met weeks ago, the one who had been unsure of herself, torn between duty and desire. This was a woman who knew her path, who knew what needed to be done. We don't have to agree on everything, Lyra continued, her voice now firm. But we can agree on this. Our futures are linked. If we don't stand together, we'll fall apart. The silence in the room was deafening. Jack could feel the weight of her words, the power of her conviction. It was as if the whole room was holding its breath, waiting for a reaction. He could sense the council members, alien and human alike, grappling with the truth in her words. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a human diplomat stood up, his face expressionless. "Lyra," he said, his voice filled with a mix of respect and caution. "You have spoken with great courage. I agree with you. Let us move forward. We must." The other council members followed suit, slowly rising to their feet, their faces showing a mixture of acceptance and uncertainty. But Lyra had done it. She had proven that she could lead, that she could speak for her people and for humanity. Jack's heart swelled with pride as he looked at her. She had not only earned their respect, but she had also earned her place as a leader. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Jack truly believed that they could face it together. As the council members voted, the treaty passed. It wasn't unanimous, but it didn't matter. The seeds of peace had been planted, and in that moment, Jack knew that no matter what happened next, Lyra's choice had changed everything. They were no longer just two individuals from different worlds. They were a symbol of what could be accomplished when trust was given and when the future was chosen together. The sun had barely risen over the horizon, casting long shadows across the peaceful landscape. The treaty had been signed, and the alliance between Earth and Lyra's people was official. But for Jack and Lyra, the real journey had only just begun. The council had been a turning point, but now, the true test lay ahead. The excitement of the treaty passing was still fresh, but both Jack and Lyra knew that their bond, and the alliance they represented, would face challenges. There were still those who opposed the treaty, both on Earth and among Lyra's people. Some viewed the agreement as a necessary evil, others as a betrayal of everything their civilizations had known. But Jack and Lyra had done something few believed possible. They had earned each other's trust, and that was something neither side could ignore. Jack sat beside Lyra in the garden, the same garden where they had spoken about her hair, her history, and her fears. The same garden where their connection had deepened, where they had learned not just about each other, but about themselves. Lyra rested her head against the back of the stone bench, her eyes closed as the soft breeze blew through her hair. Her once shimmering strands now seemed steady, calm, reflecting her inner peace. For the first time in a long time, Lyra wasn't weighed down by expectations. She had chosen her path, and though the future was still uncertain, she felt a sense of freedom she hadn't known before. "This feels like a dream," Lyra said softly, her voice full of wonder. "I never thought we'd get here. I never thought I'd have the courage to stand up for what I wanted." Jack smiled, leaning back in his seat. "You didn't just stand up for yourself, Lyra. You stood up for both of us. For our people, for peace." Lyra opened her eyes and turned toward him. Her gaze was filled with gratitude and something deeper, something Jack couldn't quite place. "I couldn't have done it without you. You believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." Jack's heart swelled at her words. He had never been a leader, not in the way Lyra had been. But in that moment, he realized that they had both played a part in this new beginning. They had both risked everything for something they couldn't fully see yet, but something they both knew was worth fighting for. "You were always stronger than you gave yourself credit for," Jack said, his voice warm with affection. "And now we have the chance to build something better. Together." Lyra smiled, the corners of her mouth lifting in a way that made Jack's chest tighten. She had come so far, and now she was ready for what came next. For the first time, she wasn't looking back at the life she had left behind. She was focused on the future they would create together. "I never thought this would be possible," Lyra admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But now, I can't imagine a life without you, Jack." Jack reached out, taking her hand in his. The weight of her words hung in the air, but instead of feeling heavy, it felt light, like a promise of something new, something worth fighting for. "We'll face whatever comes next, Lyra," Jack said, squeezing her hand. "And we'll do it together, no matter what." Lyra's eyes sparkled with a newfound determination. "Together," she repeated, the word carrying a weight of its own. As they sat in the quiet of the garden, the world around them seemed to stand still, waiting. The road ahead would be difficult. There would be resistance, there would be doubts, and there would be moments of fear. But Jack knew one thing for sure. He and Lyra had already crossed the hardest part. They had taken the first step, not just as representatives of two civilizations, but as two people who had found something rare: trust, connection, and hope. And that hope, Jack realized, was stronger than anything else. The sun continued to rise, and with it, the promise of a new beginning. The days following the signing of the treaty were filled with the excitement of new beginnings, but also with the weight of what was to come. Jack and Lyra had brought their worlds together, but the path forward was anything but certain. There were still those who opposed the alliance, and many obstacles to overcome. Yet for Jack and Lyra, there was one thing that remained clear. They had each other, and together, they could face whatever challenges came their way. The peace talks had been successful, but the real test was how the treaty would affect their daily lives. Earth and Lyra's people were still learning to trust each other. The agreements needed to be put into action, and both sides had to navigate the complex reality of working together. It was a time of change, and that change would not come easily. Jack and Lyra walked side by side through the corridors of the Peace Center, their footsteps echoing softly in the quiet hall. The building was filled with representatives from both sides, some speaking in hushed tones, others busy with paperwork and discussions. But for Jack and Lyra, the noise around them seemed distant. It was as if they were in their own world, where nothing could break the bond they had formed. "We've come a long way," Jack said, glancing at Lyra with a soft smile. "I never thought we'd make it this far." Lyra looked at him, her violet eyes bright. "Neither did I. But now that we're here, it feels like the possibilities are endless." Jack nodded, his gaze falling on the distant horizon outside the building. The city stretched out before them, a mix of alien architecture and human structures, a symbol of the unity they had fought for. It was a new world, a world they had helped create together. "There's still a lot of work to do," Jack said, his voice filled with determination. "But I think we're ready for it. I know I am." Lyra's eyes softened. "I used to think that I had to do everything alone, that I had to follow the path others set for me. But now I know that we're stronger together. We're not just leaders of our people, we're partners. And that makes all the difference." Jack smiled, feeling the weight of her words. They had both learned so much from each other. Lyra had shown him the importance of trust, of looking beyond the surface, and he had shown her that it was okay to let go of the past and embrace the future. Together, they had built something powerful, a bridge between two worlds, a future where both Earth and Lyra's people could thrive. As they walked out into the open courtyard, the sun setting in the distance, Jack took a deep breath. It was a new day, one filled with challenges, but also filled with hope. The world was changing, and they were at the heart of it. "There's no going back now," Jack said with a grin, looking over at Lyra. "But that's all right. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Lyra squeezed his hand, her smile matching his. "So am I. Together, we'll face it all." And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack and Lyra stood side by side, ready to embrace the future they had fought so hard to create. The road ahead would not always be easy, but they had each other, and together, there was nothing they couldn't overcome.